Hi, I'm Tom Savini, and you're watching Without Your Head. But why?
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal.
I'm Treacherous Trista.
And we're joined by FX artist Geoff Scott. It's very cool to have you here.
Happy to be here.
So season 2 of Snowpiercer is currently on TNT. How did you get involved in it originally, going back to season 1?
All the way back to season 1. Originally, there was a whole other version of Snowpiercer that was done, and that was shelved. And my good friend Graham Manson took over as showrunner, and he and I worked together on a show called Orphan Black for 5 years, which was with Tatiana Maslany. And he brought me on board after a couple months of, trying to refine the design and the aesthetic and the look and the feel of the world. And it's been 3.5 years of my life now, something like that. It can't be 3.5. Anyways, but that's how. Yeah. So I came on board. I did some preliminary. I was just kind of excited about the project. I actually gotten a copy of one of the first prints of the graphic novel when I was like 17 in Paris. I'd seen the feature film when I was working in South Korea on its premiere. So there is, I already had sort of a little connective tissue with the property, but more as a fan than as somebody working on it. And then, and I started just shooting designs at him from my office in Toronto, and then I came out.
You said there was another version of it originally that was shelved. So was any of that brought over, like any of like the look or the design, or did you start all from scratch?
The VFX we started entirely from scratch. I mean, the interior we started from scratch too. It was a complete redesign, rethink, rework. Originally, the train that had been designed, it had never fully been realized or actualized. So there was nothing to really work off of. And Graham has always sort of had an inkling towards like a steampunky design. And then I was like, hey, let's talk about diesel punk. He's like, what's diesel punk? I'm like, well, it's decades after steampunk, and started showing some designs. And there's this one train called the Mercury that I just love the aesthetic of, and that really influenced the design. So.
Interesting. And since you already you saw the movie and you even read the graphic novel, how much of that is influenced in the look of things?
Well, the feature not so much, but definitely the graphic novel. We really wanted to sort of come back to this real sort of bull nose sort of front end that just looked, brutalist, that could smash through anything. So that was what, like, if you actually look at the Mercury train and you look at the graphic novel train and you look at our train, there's a lot of sort of aesthetic connection.
Yeah, I've not read the graphic novel. I actually want to pick it up. I saw the movie in the theater when it came out here at a local art house theater.
Well, what's really cool about the graphic novel is it's 3 individual stories, or like times on the train, and they're all by the same writer artist, but they're done decades apart. So like the first one was in the 70s, the second one was in the 80s.
Oh, interesting.
The third part was in the 90s, and so his art style completely changes throughout. It's really interesting.
Yeah. This is more the people who write the show, but is the show itself from all those different series, or is it from like the first series, or is it completely different from the source material?
We are initially we sort of touched on more of the graphic novel. Initially, characters' names and sort of reasons for doing a few bits and bobs. There's a few characters' names in season 2 that are lifted from the graphic novel and sort of their sort of quirky aesthetic. The Headwoods, for example, but it's definitely a story in its own universe, if you will.
Season 2 is a lot different in a lot of ways, and so you had to design a whole new train, and then a lot of outside stuff. So when you have like another train, I guess you want to keep them in the same world, but it also has to look different. So like, what was that like to to create like the look of a whole new train setting?
Well, yeah. Again, I mean that's the thing. They need to share the same DNA, really. We hired. I hired a concept artist named Alex Nice. Me and my producer, my VFX producer, and he designed the first one. So he designed, the Snowpiercer engine and all its supplemental cars. And then what we ended up doing was we basically, once we knew, we had always had an inkling there was going to be a secondary car. And so we said, okay, so here's the thing. It needs to be a brick. That was literally what we were told. Big Alice needs to just be a big square powerhouse box. But you still have to connect it to, thematically somehow back to Snowpiercer. And what we're able to do is because Big Alice is at the end. She's a shunt car. She can go either way on the track. And she's really just a pusher. She's just a mean pushing, And so we had the opportunity. We designed Snowpiercer so that it could be latched onto the back. And that had always been part of the design. There's a couple little sort of slots for things to fit in, but nobody used to ever notice it. So like the door at the back was always there. Nobody just noticed it because we sort of hidden it and shot around it. So we knew that was how one of the ways we were going to aesthetically connect the two. So when you see that nose pushing through the snow, it's reminiscent of the shape of Snowpiercer, and so that helped a lot. And then the rest of that we used the bobbit worm and the sarcastic fringe head fish, which is a real name of a fish. Its mouth's opened up and whatnot, and they clamped on the back of it. But that was sort of it. We brought Alex in, and he designed it. I mean, to be honest, I'd hired a small team to design Snowpiercer initially, and they just threw around rough ideas. And so I fed those to Alex. And on Snowpiercer, his first design was what Snowpiercer ended up becoming. Like it was just, he knocked it out of the park. And then we said, okay, you have all the information you need. And his first design of Big Alice was almost perfect. We just had to make the window bigger. And that was it. Like, it was like, he really the guy's top notch.
Mm-hmm. So. There's a lot more outside in this one too. The outer world, the cold world. And that looks really good.
Yeah. We're doing a lot more outside in season 2 for sure. We're actually building up more of the world. Season 1, we used train shots predominantly just to more as establishers, and they'd be a supplemental story beat, like when it gets hit by an avalanche.
Yeah.
But in season 2, with we literally start. There's a whole 20 minutes outside the train at the beginning. Melanie's out there, and then episode 3, she gets off again, and what do you guys get to episode 6?
Yeah, we've seen up to 8. So
yeah. Oh, you've seen up to 8? Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot.
We don't want to
give
too much away, but yeah.
No, there's more.
Yeah. What are just some of the things you do to make everything look cold? I guess, like besides just have snow.
Well, to be honest, it's one of those things. So like I'm from Ontario, which gets very cold in the winter, and so there's this tendency of people like who don't experience cold that often to be like, oh no, it's got to be overcast and dull and gray. It's like no. actually the colder it is, the brighter it is often. Like, because, clouds don't like to form when it gets too cold, So, I mean, we can't not have clouds in our world. It would look alien and bizarre. I mean, I did start going down the, what actually would happen to, hydrogen and oxygen molecules in the air if it did get down to minus 120, but it would look like an alien landscape. It would all be black and nightless and even in the day. So we didn't do that. But no, a lot of times, I mean, we really just try and do with a lot of what I call sort of environmental balancing, which is where we just kind of add drifting, blowing, floating kind of snow, because that always makes it feel like it's whipping around and hitting you in the face and those kinds of things. We do a bit of breath work in the train when the temperature drops in there. But we try and keep that, pretty, use that rather sparingly, because it can end up looking like two dragons having a conversation back and forth. So.
Yeah. I'm in Massachusetts. It's cold here, but it's not as cold as Canada, I guess.
Yeah. No. Boston is in Mass. It's cold in the winter, man. I've been there in February. You guys get it too. So
Trista's in LA, so she's nice and warm at the moment.
Yeah, well, you can tell by the glow. Just
thank you.
a general smile on her face.
I'm very content. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. I had somebody complain to me once living in Santa Monica that they had rain, and I was like, "Shut your mouth."
Santa Monica's even too cold for me.
Oh my God. I literally, so we're actually filming in BC, and before this, I ran out to grab a quick bite, and it started hailing in the parking lot. It never snows here, and I'm like getting pelted in the face with ice.
It gets you in the mood to.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny because we're still wrapping it. Like so I'm here back at the studio, and we're prepping season 3, and I'm still wrapping season 2. Like I still have episodes 9 and 10 to finish delivering. In the next week or so. So it's like, in fact, actually, my last episode, my 209, my last shot is due tonight to be cut in tomorrow, to be graded tomorrow.
Thank you for taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. Happy to. So it's but we go to camera on Tuesday. So this is sort of my last opportunity to talk to.
I don't know if people realize that sometimes, though, that a show is actually being like finished while that season is still like airing.
Oh God!
I think a lot of people probably think it's all completely done when first episode comes on.
No. We are very okay. How do I say this without sounding? COVID did me a favor because it pushed coming back. It was really. Normally our seasons have overlapped quite significantly. And while, for when we started prepping season 2, which started in the September of that year, I was only 2/3 done the season's 1 visual effects. Now we knew our January air date was coming up. That was fine, but because there's been so much more in the ways of visual effects or demands on visual effects in this season, having pushed our start date to now March, that bought me a lot of time to focus on just developing visual effects, as opposed to trying to prep season 3, which is even more insane. So having that time to focus and quarantine and everybody locking down has been a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Not my sanity, but that part, in the one hand.
Yeah. I guess maybe an obvious question, but what are some of the differences? Because you worked on a lot of features, not just a series, but working on, a feature film, it's, 90 minutes, and then a series where it's, multiple seasons going into season 3. What are the differences on working on the two?
Honestly, I from a personal standpoint or a professional standpoint, I don't, I always try to bring whatever I can, I don't believe in, oh, well, this is a series, so we can be down here. I always try and sort of up the game. I always have the confines of the budget to work with, but the big thing is sort of workflow and methodology, right? So we like to lock up episodes sooner, so in order, and yet there'll be times when you've got this massive visual effect in at the first episode, which like, hey, if I just sort of can chip away at it across the entirety of post, then it'll look even much better by the end. Sort of get all the low hanging fruit out of the way first, if you will, like blue screen set extension behind trains and corridors. So that's probably the biggest thing. Like in the world of feature, all your big shots you end up refining throughout the entirety of the show. Whereas in series work, you have to go, okay, well, no, that's it. It's done. It needs to go to color. Audio needs it. They need to do all the effects and whatnot. So you have to let things go sooner in sort of larger blocks. That's the big difference.
You mentioned, you saw the original movie and you even read the comic. And you've worked on a lot of genre films. Are you a fan of science fiction and horror?
God, yeah, no, yeah. You don't get into visual effects, I don't think, without at least some inkling at some point. No. I'm a huge nerd. I love it. It's I when I was 4, I saw Star Wars and I that was it. I was 1977 4-year-old, and all I wanted to do was make monsters and aliens and robots and spaceships and now I do. So that's yeah.
Trista, you have a question? Sorry.
Do you have any advice for someone who might aspire to a similar career path?
Yeah, it's. I mean, the biggest thing I'd say is learn art fundamentals, learn photography. You'd be amazed how many people in this in the job don't come into it with that. They teach themselves or get taught how to use a particular piece of software. They have an inclination, but not the sort of the foundation in which to support that. A lot of companies, not a lot of companies, but there are a few companies. If they are more so inclined to hire artists and teach them how to use the software, because the software is something you can pick up in a few months. Really, you need to understand all the principles of how to frame, how light works, how color works. All those things. Those take a lot longer to teach somebody than not. So I'd say, yeah, like honestly, take art courses, take photography courses, all those things, and then look at learning the softwares.
I mean, that makes sense because that stuff is just another tool. And if you don't know how light, affects the shadows and everything, or even how you would light something, how could you do it? I don't want to say fake, but virtually.
Digitally, yeah, or virtually, yeah.
Digitally, yeah.
Well, that's just it. Like it's funny because you end up like a lot of there's a sort of a lot of oh, I'm glad they did that practically. In the sort of the film fan community, and I always laugh at that because 90% of the time that they've done it practically, they've completely removed that practical element and replaced it with the digital. I've done it, dozens of times, and I mean, I worked on a horror film, The Witch, and people are like, what, you just did the floating bit at the end. And it's like, no, we did like 143 shots of that movie. You just can't tell because we did them well enough. But you still need all the craftsmanship of a model maker, of a painter, of a, all these very specific skill sets that it's taken the visual effects industry some time for people to get into it. When I first started, we if you wanted to make something look rusty, you'd put on a rust texture and you'd be like, good enough, it's done. It's what we have. And now we have there's a package called Substance Painter, where you literally will define the material properties of something, but then you get to throw virtual oil and mud at it, and it all slides down, and it's all real. I mean, I spent hours just throwing mud at stuff and just for fun. It's but knowing how the physics of where dirt sticks on something, where the light would actually fade it, that just comes with all the other skill set I learned before getting into visual effects.
You said you've watched Star Wars when you're 4, and you love this stuff. So when did you pursue it as a career, and how did you pursue it as a career? I don't know if it was as easy, at that time.
No, it was terribly not easy. It was awful. It was so in high school, I done some courses in makeup effects. And
I don't want to mean that it's easy now. It's just, I think there's more ways to know how to pursue it. You know what I mean?
There are many more footholds to be had. There are many more avenues of education now. When I was first looking, it was nearly impossible. There's only a couple schools in the world that would teach computer animation, and I tried my hand at classical animation. Did not have the patience for that. I know how to do it, but it's brutal. You spend hours drawing something, and in 24 frames a second, and you get a couple of seconds into it, and the client goes, "No, I want it to be right to left, not left to right," and you basically take all that paper and throw it out the window and you start again. I was like, "There's got to be an easier way to do this." And then, when I got into it, there was just this little hiccup of a boom, and I thought, okay, this is going to be great. And then I was in it for a week, and it all bottomed out. All these digital houses shut their doors and whatnot. So it was a real struggle, but I knew this is what I wanted to do, and this is kind of how I did it. And you just sort of persevered. So I went to work for a ride film company for a while because they were looking for people, and you just slowly chip away and work at it. There were very few companies globally then. There were probably only a few hundred people. Yeah, I would say there were probably, when I first started, there's probably less than 1,000 people maybe doing it. Visual effects, truly. Now you've got companies that are literally thousands of people. You look at the end credits of your larger feature films, and the numbers are a small city, the people that work on it. So.
Trista, you have another question?
You've made some scary things. I'm wondering if you have any fears or phobias yourself that you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I'm absolutely comfortable. Okay, so I was filming one movie. I won't say what it is because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. And I almost fell off a building because I was getting a plate shot, and I wasn't secured, and a gust of wind kind of caught me, and I'm like, I'll just lean over, and I caught my foot caught a toehold on the track for the washing machine, the washing basket. And I slowly pulled myself back as I felt my shoe slowly slipping off my heel. No, it was really scary. It was really my producer, she turned her back to talk to the locations guy. And she, just as I was kind of she's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "No, that's fine." So then I didn't realize, but as a result of that, I developed an irrational fear of heights, which also didn't help when I flew. That being said, I had to shoot a bunch of plate photography for Snowpiercer season 1, and it looks all beautiful and smooth because we shot it at 120 frames a second with this incredibly military grade stabilized head. But it was the scariest flight experience I'd ever had, and I was in this thing for 8 hours, and it's like at one point the pilot's like, "Okay, we're in free fall now, but we're okay because this hasn't happened." And at one point he's like, "Okay, so the blades, the rotors are now 1.5 feet between mountain peaks and stuff like that. But after that, I'm no longer afraid of heights. So I had this like 3-year window of being deathly afraid of heights and being out of control to being, yeah, I'm okay with it. So,
Well, that's good. I'm glad you're not afraid of heights anymore.
so, but I was like,
Right.
but it was really irrational. Well, it was rational because it almost happened, but I couldn't control it. So.
Yeah. Along those lines, Trista said you made a lot of scary things, and you also made a lot of cool things. If you could pick just like a couple things to showcase like what you've done, what would you pick?
Okay. I really, so in Snow White and the Huntsman, the army at the beginning of the film, when we're sort of in the past, in the prelude, I guess. The Black Knights that shatter into sort of this crystalline obsidian onyx. I really, really liked how those turned out. I was really, really happy with that. Not something so much I created, but I'm very proud of my body of work on Orphan Black. Again, what made me really happy was nobody noticed all the stuff we did in it, and all the praise went to
Interesting. That's probably the best compliment in a way, but also then you're...
Well, exactly. It's like everybody just thinks, oh, it's super easy, right?
Yeah.
Or like, oh, she's so amazing. But she is. She is fantastic. I miss working with her, actually. She's one of the best actors I've ever worked with, ever. But we did some crazy stuff in that show that nobody noticed. Like, she's always like, and it's always little things, like never like hey, look at this thing that I'm doing with my hands kind of thing. It would always be like somebody in the background, like a version of her in the background pouring herself a glass of wine, but it was all story motivated and just little things that nobody realized how much connective tissue there was. So that was always that was a great experience there. So and not to be like, because I'm working on it now, and I mean honestly I haven't gotten off the train in 3 years, but I'm very proud of the design of Snowpiercer. So it's one of those things I really love the look of it, and it's something that
Something that when I was watching Snowpiercer, I was thinking about, because you have to keep it narrow so it's in a train. Is that ever hard to deal with? Like, because you have really cool sets, but they can't be too big because they have to fit in the train.
Yes, scale. Scale is the biggest thing. I mean, our art director Steve Keegan, he's got the pressure of always trying to build a long set and conceive it that way. My biggest balancing act with respect to that is really just the balancing the exterior scale and the interior scale, and getting people to like our train is so long that, I mean, you need to be, I calculated it season 1. I think you need to be like 250 feet in the air to be able to see the end of it, because the curvature of the earth starts affecting it based on the length of train, right? Like every 2.3 kilometers, you have to deal with a 3-degree curve. So getting people's head around how big the train is sort of like, a big thing. And then it's always a balancing act of like, people want to see forever on the train when you're in the train, but it's still designed like a train. So there's not a lot of through cars. So always trying to find moments where we can lengthen the inside. We did it quite a bit in season 1, like with the cattle car sequence. Mm-hmm. We extended rooms off of it with cows, because otherwise it was actually quite a short space.
Yeah. Trista, another question?
When you're watching films, are you just dissecting the movie magic the whole time?
On second viewing. It took me a long time to stop doing that and just enjoy it. Like the first 10 years, 7 years, I did this. All I did was look at the... so I had to train myself to appreciate other people's work. And then the second time I go through and I'm like, wait, what about that? And again, it's the best magic trick is when you don't know it's a magic trick. I love arguing with people about what they when they tell me what I didn't do and what I did. So it's always fun.
Yeah. I just want to ask a couple of questions. When I mentioned on Facebook you were coming on, a lot of questions. You also asked a couple. Nicholas Hatch wants to know, he says he's a huge fan of Dead Silence, and did you have any stories working with James Wan?
Oh, no. No, I mean, to be honest, when I first, yes, a little tiny. I built, on that, or I was one of the people that built the CG tongue. The Tongue of Tongues. When I first met him, I thought he was just another VFX artist, a new VFX artist that had showed up for the day, because I was an artist on the box at that point. And so I was like, oh, hey, you new here? He's like, no, I'm James. I'm like, so James, you're new here? What's going on? He's like, no, I'm the director. I'm like, oh, cool. Fuck. And he seemed nice. Again, I wasn't the primary supervisor.
Right. It was before he was, really took off.
Yeah.
And Dean wants to know, what was the most challenging aspect of working on The Void?
Budget.
What was that?
Budget. They had no
budget. Yeah.
No.
I'm friends with Jeremy and Steven, who made it. So.
Yeah, no. It's funny. I actually just watched Psycho Gorman. 2 nights ago.
I was talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So no. The Void was good. Just initially, it was just. I did it through another. I did it when I was working vendor side. Initially, I worked for a company where I just ended up becoming the show's VFX supervisor a lot of times, and I was told my budget was this much, and I had to keep it within that window. And once I realized I couldn't even come close to accommodating or accomplishing their vision, I just kind of said, fuck it, I'm going to spend as much money as I want to and do it properly or as properly as we can within the time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big concept for a smaller budget film.
Oh yeah. And I mean, we really focused the extent of my work really focused on the last sequence where, the ceremony's happening and then we go into this other world.
Trista, you have another question?
As you're describing your work, I'm reminded of the artistry of video games. So I'm wondering if you're a gamer yourself.
Oh yeah, I worked in games for 3.5 years. I actually, so I worked, I quit this business once, vowing never to return, shook my fist to the skies and said, never again. And, I went to, work, for a company called Ninja Theory in the UK. And, there I worked on a game called Heavenly Sword, which was PlayStation 3. And then another one, which was called, I forgot what it was called, but it was an absolute fantastic experience. But I love video games. I've always played. In fact, actually, I came out of that experience, and would talk to anybody who would listen to me about, we need to stop doing, thinking of our backgrounds as map paintings, and we need to start building them out as environments, and like we do in video games. And, we should look at, at that time, I think it was Unreal 3, Unreal 4 was just around the corner. I'm like, we can literally, build these as real-time environments and move the camera anywhere and line it up. Which is a lot of what they're doing now with The Mandalorian and whatnot, which is using Unreal game engine to drive that.
Are there any video games you'd like to see become a movie that haven't?
None.
They usually don't turn out well, I'll be honest.
No, well, okay, so it's sort of like
movie.
It's no. See, the problem with a video game is it's a very specific narrative that the game designers are creating, but it's a narrative that you help define. And with a feature film or a TV series, you are forcing a person down a very specific narrative. It's sort of like the reason why a lot of times books don't work as well is because your imagination has an unlimited budget, and it can look as amazing or as scary or whatever.
That's why the end of the original It never worked for a lot of people.
Exactly.
What you
exactly.
envision, what Pennywise is never.
I mean, and yeah, I was in middle school when that came out, and I was like, "What? This is awful!" And I literally forced myself to read a 1,000-page book in grade 7, which is an impossible task then, But yeah, so I think video games are, it's sort of like saying what movie. I almost feel like it's like I've always thought of video games as sort of almost actually next step in entertainment. And like I think video games are to film and television what film and television was to the theatrical experience, and radio, so.
Remember a couple of years ago on Netflix, they had a movie where it was almost like a pick-a-path where it didn't quite work, but maybe something like that, you could evolve that.
Yeah, but again, I also had I watched another video game adaptation last night called Monster Hunter, and it didn't work. Again, and I was a huge fan of the game. I loved playing endlessly and hunting monsters and chopping them up and turning them into pelts and stuff like that. And watching somebody else's film of it, it's sort of you know what? Sorry, not to go on this, beat this to death, but I feel like when you watch a feature film that's been adapted from a video game, it's like watching your older brother play video games.
Uh-huh.
You're watching, you're not there. You're just sort of cheering along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Which, though, it's weird because that's become a thing, like on the internet. There are a lot of people who watch other people game, which I never can quite understand. But
I think it's actually even gone one step more. I think there are people on like making videos of people watching videos of people playing video games. Like it's actually, my son, I have a 13-year-old and he's wonderful. And I was like, are you literally watching a game about people watching video of people playing like, yeah, like I was the fool. I'm like, hey buddy, no, that's fine. I'm just gonna go and my head in shame. Okay. I'm probably gonna watch this too.
Yeah. Well, I'm really looking forward, not just because you're here, but the next 2 episodes of, there's more episodes for most people. But I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of Snowpiercer season 2 to see what happens.
Yeah, what is it?
I'm also thinking of going and, not that you're connected, but going and buying the graphic novels because the show really hooked me.
Good. Yeah, no, I enjoy them. I think you can enjoy them.
And do you have any place people can follow you? Not like to your home, but online or?
No, you know what? To be honest, I don't. I barely tweet. I barely do.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was trying to find some pictures.
Yeah, no, I honestly, I work on the show. I work on the train. I haven't been allowed off the train for 3 years, and I'm happy to be on it. It takes up most of everything. I have nothing to plug. Sorry.
That's fine. Snowpiercer. It's good. And are you working on anything currently besides? Well, Snowpiercer seems to be taking up a lot of your time.
No, Snowpiercer. It's funny. I was there was 1 year. Sorry, props wanted me to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know we're a little longer than we said.
No, it's okay. I'll see what Jim wants after. No. There's one point in my life when 1 year I worked on 8 projects, got an Emmy nomination. I was for a while doing independent video game stuff. I released 3 apps. It's nominated for Canadian Video Game of the Year. Like it was all within I was like, yeah, just constantly churning out stuff, and there is so much involved with Snowpiercer, and happily so. It takes all my time. Like my family is back in Toronto. I moved out here. I live out here for the duration of shooting, and I focus on the train. So yeah, no, nothing else. So,
very good. Well, this has been great. Really enjoyed talking with you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye, guys.
Stay warm. Don't go up on high things.
No.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
This is R.A. Mihailov, Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and you're watching Without Your Head. And you will be watching Without Your Head if you don't watch Without Your Head.